If machines could do all or most of what we today consider productive work and labor, what then would we do? What if we could remove the word productive from discussions about human work? I believe we will soon have an outdated model of work, and that's a good thing. An opportunity, not a threat. An opportunity for humans to be, well, more uniquely human and less robotic. I'm here today to talk to you about AI-powered robots, and hopefully to leave you a bit optimistic, a bit concerned, and probably quite confused. We started Everyday Robots, an AI meets robotics moonshot at Google X in early 2016, and I ran it for 7 years. I reached one conclusion, and that is the robots are coming. At Everyday Robots, our mission was to give AI a robot body. We built fully autonomous, AI-powered robots, the ones we read about in science fiction and we've seen in the movies. They were designed to help us out in our everyday lives. We had 200 robots, many of them deployed in 5 Google buildings, doing daily chores like wiping tables in cafes, sorting trash, inspecting conference rooms, and more. Most of what they were doing would not have been possible without AI. So not if, but when these types of robots start showing up, it will have a profound implication for how we live and work. My crystal ball can't tell you exactly when they'll be arriving, but I think we'll see the first ones in the next 5-ish years, and they will become increasingly sophisticated, capable, and commonplace in the next 10, 15 years. Let me show you a short video that highlights some of the work we did at Google. It'll give you a sense of what some of the hard problems are and the real state of the art, as opposed to the silly YouTube demos you've probably seen, which may look impressive, yet none of which represent what's really possible in the real world today.
In many ways, we set out to do something impossible. We set out to build a machine that, without any human assist or control, would work alongside us and help us out in the real world. We have, as humans, this innate need to explore. We explore the depths of the oceans. We explore the tallest mountains. We explore space. That's partly who we are as people. We're exploring the frontier of how you bring a sense of intelligence and understanding and cooperation with people into a machine. How do you give a machine the level of intelligence and smarts necessary to make it able to work alongside us and help us out in our daily life? That's the stuff of science fiction.
The challenge is to say, we want robots that can perform usefully and safely in completely unstructured environments alongside people. That is the vision for Everyday Robots.
It's such a simple word, every day, that the type of challenges you encounter every day are there's just a myriad.
Everyday Robots was trying to do is unlike anything else in the industry.
Making a robot operate in human spaces is a really big deal. It changes from a thing that's very niche to a thing that can be literally everywhere.
For us, a moonshot meant to create something at a scale and level that had never been achieved before. And that was really to make the first multi-purpose, ubiquitous learning robot in everyday environments.
Already, even around this environment, as the robots live amongst us and work amongst us as a team, it's normal to have everyday robots part of our workplace, which is super strange, right?
There's going to be robots among us at some point, and we have to make sure that their actions are aligned with human intention.
The coolness about robots has always been that, computers are cool. Everyone sees them, they know how much you can do with them. And if you can take that computer brain and put it inside something that moves, whoa, what can you envision from there? A lot, right?
We are working on a problem that is fundamentally unsolved. So we have no working example for anyone really building a general purpose robot that does many different tasks in unstructured environments.
The best robots you could imagine 20, 30, 50 years ago tended to be machines that did what they did because we could actually program them to do what we wanted them to do. So it required us to know exactly what the task was, be able to describe it in a very clear, concise, almost stepwise routine and algorithmic way, and then have a robot replicate that.
Right now, there's a bunch of specialized robots that work in very constrained places where everything around the robot is designed for the robot. You can have a robot weld with perfect precision over and over and over again forever. But if you want to make a robot that can open a door in a house and have it work for several different doors in several different houses, that's still really, really hard for us.
The real world is really complex and messy and unpredictable. That's a big challenge for robotics because you can't tell them very specifically what to do. So you have to build a completely new system that can inherently deal with this messiness and complexity.
You can't program robots to live amongst us and help us. You have to teach them. How does it know what I know? How can it do what I do in the world I live in?
Machine learning is one of the few things that we have that really makes it possible to get computers to behave intelligently in unstructured environments by using experience, using data, using things that the computer's seen in the past to figure out patterns.
One example that people might be very familiar with is machine learning systems learning how to recognize what's in an image. So by showing it millions of images of different kinds of objects and telling it what each image is, it can now learn to recognize any image that you show it. You can extrapolate that and use that kind of same methodology for doing much more complex tasks. Like in the case of robotics, learning how to manipulate objects, learning how to grab something.
Each time the robot attempts to do a task, we can reward it if it succeeds, tell it that it didn't succeed if it fails, and then the things that lead it to succeed get rewarded more and more often, and it gets better and better at the task.
The technology is all here to make a machine that is in space, that moves around, that can interact with you, that can do useful things. Like everything's just there. It's like the primordial soup, right? It's just something has to put it together into one coherent helper robot, and we're off.
Anyone can go sketch something. They can sketch the wackiest thing they possibly can think of. It's really hard, though, to take all the complexities that exist with the technology, from software, hardware, all of the ambiguity of product market fit, figuring out how to thread that needle. This is actually something we could technically make that might be a business that we think people would actually want to be around. That's a more fun challenge.
General purpose robotics is hard. It's legit hard. But I can see how it's going to get to a point where it's a reality.
I like the term general purpose because I think it's really staking a claim that is counter to how research is being done today. So someone might just focus on cameras, on perception, and someone might just focus on navigation, and they'll make one robot that can do one thing. There are really robots out in research that can walk up the stairs and then do something when it gets to the top of the stairs. The whole machine is designed to do just that one portion of the task. We need to get good at doing a variety of things and a variety of environments, not just seeing and moving, but also manipulating these things. And that is a big job.
Things suck at the beginning. You make all kinds of mistakes.
Holy shit.
Every time you start something new, you're in a discovery process. If there aren't problems, then that means you're done. All right, well, we're not done. We just started.
We're making meaningful progress on some of those problems. We were having robots roam around in cafes here at Google, cleaning tables on their own, autonomously.
I'm so used to it that it doesn't seem crazy. But also, if I take one step back, I go, a robot just came on my desk and picked up all my dishes and went away. Like, this is so bizarre. You're going, and the robot would come up, interrupt your work, and look at you and say, "Can I clean your desk?" And then you have to decide, tell it to, fuck off, or let it clean your desk. And so sometimes, depending on what you're working on, you're like, okay, fine, clean my desk, and you just back up and kind of watch it do its thing.
Yes, that's good.
Everyday robots is not optional. The world's population is shifting. And if we don't have labor, we're going to be in a world of hurt. Robotics and AI is essentially filling this giant void, and will increasingly be doing so because we have an aging population and we have a shrinking number of new young people entering the workforce. And those shifts are huge. There won't be people to take care of the elderly. There won't be people to do productive labor. Can we manage without robotics and AI? Yeah, but not at the level that we're used to living, and certainly not in a way that would bring other people up to the level of standard of living that we have.
So, as you can see, it was a little bit like a bunch of two-year-olds, hanging out with us when we built these things, and they were gradually learning and becoming a little bit older as they went. One of the things I thought about a lot, obviously, in doing this was the future of work. And then I realized that talking about the future of work is having the wrong conversation. AI and robots will be the future of work. We therefore need to shift the conversation to what is the nature of work? Why do we work? What does work offer other than sustenance? These are big topics that will define how AI and robotics impact humanity. When machines become autonomous, super intelligent, and increasingly capable of performing both physical and intellectual human-level tasks faster, better, cheaper than us, then what does it mean to be human? Perhaps more important, where and how do we, people, find purpose, meaning, joy, play, community fulfillment, dare I even say, more love? These are obviously not simple questions, and there are no simple answers. We have an economic framework that has served our species well the last 250 or so years, since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And here we are, facing a new era where much of what we consider to be gospel, things like work, capitalism, democracy, and many cultural norms, need to be reconsidered. I'm not concerned that the robot overlords will suddenly appear and take over, but I am concerned. AI and robots will cause huge disruption. In order to have the right conversations now, I believe we need to take a new approach to how we imagine the future where humans live good lives. That approach starts with bringing artists, philosophers, historians, psychologists, anthropologists, economists, sociologists, political scientists, policymakers, in short, the social sciences, arts, and humanities, to the source of creation of the new technologies, the new narratives, new frameworks, and the evolution of key institutions. I believe we need to think of AI-powered robots as creatures, a new species. What then does it mean to be human? Living a good life surrounded by this new species. What are the safeguards we need in order to ensure alignment with human values and goals that support our continued prosperity and well-being? And Soren, I believe that with these provocations and open-ended questions, I suspect it might be time for the two of us to have a conversation.
Good timing. So the first question is, how are you sure the robots are not going to take us over and kill us?
Because you just saw them up there. They fall over.
They're getting smarter.
They're getting smarter. I mean, so a couple of other fun facts.
Mm-hmm.
We, in 2022, we ran a large simulator so that the robots would kind of dream at night. Think of it as a video game. And the robots were all playing around in this video game to learn things, right? Because they had to practice and practice and practice in order to learn. So they were in this simulator, and we ran in the course of a year about 230 million robots in a simulator.
Okay.
So they would practice. And then in the morning, when the real robots would wake up, they would get this new model installed, and they'd kind of go, feel a little weird. And then they would start grasping and reaching for things, having learned something. And so you would take what they'd learned in simulation, which runs all night, and place it on the robots.
Wow.
So 230 million robots plus, the 200 or so physical instances. And every day they would learn something, and I'm not talking about complex stuff. I'm talking about like reaching over here and picking up this cup without spilling and knocking over the flowers. They didn't need to drink. So yes, they were improving, and they were improving with experience.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we like to say is when one robot learned something, they all learned it.
Right.
So there's a giant multiplicative effect and even an exponential factor involved here. And the things that are currently very easy for humans, like I can now look out here and with some muscle memory and sort of spatial understanding, reach over and pick up this glass and put it down without ever looking, right? That's a hard AI problem. That's almost impossible to do for a robot. Yes, it's easy for us. So this notion of learning was to live in the physical world and to manifest in the physical world is a huge, huge challenge.
Yeah.
That's also why I poo-poo a little bit the YouTube videos, because never trust a robot YouTube video. It's all basically, you've seen it in a Disney theme park. It's all effectively scripted, person behind the curtain with a joystick controlling the robot. So very little of what you actually see out there is real. And this was trying to attempt to show a little bit of just how hard it is and what is in fact possible in real today.
So what excites you the most about the new robotics being developed in ways? It feels like ChatGPT kind of launched, correct me if I'm wrong, launched even greater interest in the combination of AI along with the physical robot. And it feels like there's a lot of investment, movement, energy as never before into robots, at least from my limited vantage point. What most excites you about how they can actually help us?
So a personal story that I've told a few times, and some of you in this room might even have heard it at this point, but my mother, who lived in Norway, lived by herself until she passed away in 2021. She lived in Norway, which of course is a wealthy country that can allow care and support to show up at her house 3 times a day.
3 times a day?
3 times a day. So morning, midday, and evening. She had advanced stage Parkinson's, but she was able to live at home until the end. Every time we would speak, say on the weekends I would call her, she wouldn't even say hello. She would just say, "When are the robots coming?" And I would say, "It'll be a little while, Mom." And she'd go, "Well, they better come soon." And they didn't come soon enough for my mom. But I'm hoping they might come soon enough for me.
What do you think she wanted? Or what was
she wanted
hope?
Little things. She had Parkinson's, so she would shuffle.
Okay.
And she would drop something on the floor. And if she shuffled, she might flip over a carpet. And that could be something she might stumble over later. She might drop something on the floor and not have the ability to pick it back up. A lot of it was having 3 people, show up at your house is a wonderful privilege. And these were 3 people she'd never met before that walked into her apartment and helped her with fairly intimate things in many cases. And so I think it was dignity. It was living independently longer. So this is, this robot isn't going to end up in a, fourth story walk up, where grandma is anytime soon. But that's where this technology is going to go in various form factors, various sort of different manifestations. But I do think that, that's just one tip of the iceberg. And as I illustrated in that little movie, we're growing older and we have fewer young people. This will put a huge burden on society in terms of care for the elderly. So what if she could have one person show up every day, but that person could sit there and play cards with her? She loved playing cards, and be human with her. And the robot could kind of handle a lot of the stuff that these people would rush in. They'd have 20 minutes to do a bunch of stuff to help her and then be gone. The robot could spend maybe 3 hours doing those 20 minutes worth of labor because it's all slow and fumbly. But eventually it'll be on par. So I think, as I say up there, it's not optional. This stuff, actually, we have to have this technology in our life if we want to continue both sustainably and productively living the way we're living. Yeah. And I think it checks a lot of those boxes for me, and that's what really motivated us in this quest.
And then what are those, I do know that, not to diss Elon Musk right now at all, but I know he's like, I'm just going to have 11 or 12 kids. I'll make up for all those people who don't have kids. But it looks like more likely most people are having fewer kids, so there's a need there. What are the areas where you're hopeful that they don't enter? Or what are those areas that you think, let's leave this to humanity? Relationships, for example, or where is the bar that you think, like, okay, they need to kind of be in the other room in these areas, or are you open to whatever wants to happen and however people want to do it?
I think it's such a big question, Soren, and I think it's an important one. I'm not gonna. So areas where I wouldn't want them is in the bedroom. I don't think, we had a very clear policy. We didn't work with
robots in the bedroom. Google.
We didn't work with robots in the bedroom. We also didn't work with. We didn't weaponize. There was anybody who wanted to think about using them for military purposes. That was not something we engaged in. But I think, if you think about those funny little creatures you saw on the screen up there, they're one manifestation, right? And we call them general purpose, which I also had a bit of a troubled relationship with, because you and I are not general purpose, right? We can't stay underwater very long. We can't fly. We can't run very fast. We use cars for that. So I think you will have actually not only a new species, you will have a lot of new species and a lot of new form factors and I think the morphology of these things will evolve and to work in different environments. Yeah. And obviously there's a lot of dangerous work. There's a lot of repetitive work, which I think, today provides sustenance for some, and therefore robots will disrupt and have a negative effect to those people. But the bigger picture is they will be as productive or more productive than we are. So then it really becomes a policy question. It becomes a redistribution question. Yeah. Should all that money go to Google? I don't think so. Where does it go? The robots don't pay taxes. So if they're the only ones employed, then our entire fabric of how we live in our society as it's constructed today kind of falls apart. Yeah. Yeah. So that's why at the end there I was really saying that I think these are systems problems. They're large problems. The models we have in society today are not constructed with this in mind. Yeah. And therefore, we need new models. Yeah. And this is part of the opportunity and the challenge, right, to create these new models. And so if work and
societal
labor...
models.
Societal models, exactly. Yeah, not AI models. So societal models, we need new... So we need to rethink, when I say instead of the future of work, think about the nature of work. Like, what is work, right? It gives us, I always think of it as giving us four things. It gives us sustenance, an income, but it also gives us an identity. It gives us a sense of purpose, and it gives us community. Yeah. Right? Well, take away the sustenance and think, okay, could we solve that some other way? Well, what are some good ways to find identity, purpose, and community? Right? We humans, imagine if we didn't have to do labor and we could still do those things. And I don't want to be a sort of utopian in the sense that we should just do basic, universal basic income and everything will be fine. But there are fundamental cultural norms that will have to be rewritten.
Yeah.
And AI and robotics is sort of poking very hard at that.
And how far away are we from that? I know it's going to come in stages, but are you looking like, wow, 5 years from now, a large percentage of jobs will be done either by AI or robots? Or what is your sense of the speed at which that might entail?
One of my favorite
We will not hold
quotes-
you to your
yeah.
guess.
As I said, my crystal ball isn't that good. One of my favorite quotes is Paul Sappho from the Institute of the Future. He said, don't confuse a clear view with a short path.
Okay.
And I think of myself as sort of standing on a mountain, I like mountains. I think I'm standing on a mountaintop, watching like this valley down there, green, lush valley, and then I know I'm going to that mountain over there. But then when I get down in there, there's alligators and mosquitoes and all kinds of stuff I need to sort of get through to get even to the base of the other mountain, let alone provision and go up. So I sort of think of us as staring over at that motion. I can see where we're going. It's very clear. And it is going to take a while. So specifically, I think in 5 years we'll start like running into these kinds of things more. We'll suddenly see them in a retail place. We'll see them in an assisted living facility. We'll see them in office buildings. We'll see them in factories for sure. The hard ones, as we tried to illustrate here, are the unstructured environments. So often, factories are very structured, so everything can be pre-programmed, and so they're already there.
Yeah.
A form of automation. There's lots of automation going on with robots. But these kind of robots that are intelligent robots that can actually interact with us and do things, that's a much harder challenge. So I think we'll start seeing the first ones maybe in 5 years. I think Elon Musk's predictions are way off. There's no way that walking thing they've created is going to show up anywhere in 1 year, which is what he's saying right now, doing anything useful. That I'll put $10 on. But
put a rocket on.
Yeah, if you put a rocket on, it can move fast. But I think that in the next sort of decades, we'll start really seeing robots having a meaningful impact in unstructured environments, from homes to offices to workplace.
And do you have I know it's not quite on topic, but do you have a similar sense of AI in general, that AI is going to move much faster just because the robotics are just more difficult and more challenging? And that as we have AI now training the next generation of AI, we'll have robots seemingly building the next generation of robots at some point. And
at some point, for sure.
Is there a future where, I guess I see a future when I think about all this stuff, I see a future of that impacting the society very, very quickly in the next few years, and the society not being ready for that. Let's take out robots for a second, but just the impact of AI. And I'm curious if you see that as well, or do you see that it's moving at a pace and society seems to be well prepared? And
no.
And what
we're not well prepared.
Right. Yeah. Right. So how do we? What is your sense of creating that structure so that all of this lands in a more wholesome, better way? Because the tech companies aren't going to slow down.
If I had a simple answer to that, or a quick answer to that, I'd be running for president or something. Right?
You actually don't need answers for anything when running for president these days. I don't even notice.
If I had a really stupid answer for that, I'd run for president.
Actually, the fewer answers you have, the better.
Okay. All right. So, look, I tend to be a techno-optimist. I tend to believe in humanity, and I believe in the human spirit, and I believe in our ability to solve really hard problems. And I believe in story. I mean, we've heard about that a few times already. I think Yuval Harari is doing us a huge favor by really helping us understand the importance of story, the importance of institutions,
and the danger of story.
Well, and how stories also
both the danger and the importance.
In his latest book, and you can't miss a podcast with Yuval Harari right now. So
I interviewed him the other one too.
So I think he makes some really important points about information networks and how the cheap stories to produce are the made-up stories, the fictional stories. The actual truth-based stories that do all the research and the work to get to some sense of a definable and truth. Those are expensive to produce, and therefore, we're flooded with not false narratives, even just stories, stories about whatever people want to make up. whatever you want to believe. So I think, you know, we saw the Just Text for Justice woman this morning, fantastic effort for like using AI to do something really, really important, right?
Yeah.
That what she was illustrating, it couldn't have been done before. It was not economically feasible. And you heard about these, you know, these public defenders who are hugely overwhelmed. There's so many stories like that where the technology is positive. Why can't we tell more of those stories? Why can't we create a narrative that also looks at the good and then makes us believe in that and promote it, as opposed to all the sort of, you know, just fretting about everything that's bad, and that could go wrong, because everything's always had, you know, like we heard Oppenheimer this morning, right? I mean, shit really could have gone wrong, right? And at a whole different level. I was in the military in the Cold War in Norway, north of the Arctic Circle. We were pulled out of our beds in the middle of the night and told to march off into the snow and fake drills because there might be conflict, right? I viscerally remember what that was like and what it felt like to think that nuclear weapons might be raining down on our camp, our base. But you stayed, you know, then you know, you stayed positive. You told stories. You worked through institutions. You worked through, you know, global cooperation. So I think for me, you know, if I was to see one area of success in the near term, I would focus on global cooperation around AI. AI, especially AI for weapon systems, taking humans out of the loop, AI in sort of really critical areas that could fundamentally undermine, like could press the red button, right? I don't want an AI or a robot pressing that red button, right? There needs to be several layers of humans in the loop before that happens. So things like that could be perhaps addressed and solved more effectively. And the same with, you know, financial systems, taking humans out of the loop there. You know, what could possibly go wrong, right? so I think there's so many areas, but sadly there's no simple.
Now that you're no longer with the tech company, but you understand the large tech company kind of mentality and needs and focuses, what role do they have? And if they're in a very competitive capitalist system, doesn't that lead us into all kinds of problems as people race to win and to control markets and not necessarily be as thoughtful as they could be? And how do we create systems that maybe give some guardrails to this new development? Do you have a sense of what you would think about that?
Yeah, so two thoughts about that. The first one is, so I'm no longer affiliated with any big company, and so
you can trash them now.
No, I was actually gonna say something kind of cool about Google, which was I had an incredible amount of autonomy running this project at Google. I was able to, we created something we called Impact Lab. An Impact Lab was a place where we had an artist in residence, we had a philosopher, we had a former head of the SEIU, the second largest labor union in the United States, as an advisor for the program. We had economists, anthropologists, designers. We had a whole group of people internally having real conversation. And it was, if once you put people on stage, then they can't say shit. But when you take them behind, people actually want to communicate and they want to be a part of the process of inventing and making. And that process allowed us to have difficult conversations. And guess what? The employees, the people on my team loved it because they saw this shit, they saw what could happen. And they said, well, at least now we have somewhere to go discuss it and to understand and to learn, right? So I think corporations, and Google allowed that, right? They fully welcomed me to
They funded it,
this up. They funded it, yeah, it wasn't cheap to do this. And so I want more companies to be willing to take that kind of risk. They don't have to stand up and use it as marketing and stuff, but they need internally to create structures. And that, by the way, needs to be sort of straight up to the CEO, right? That needs to be, it can't be some office, some HR function on the side down here that gets budget one year and not the next. It needs to be a cultural shift where these corporations, because, you know, who works in these companies? Probably many of you, right? We all are, this is our daily blood, so we all care. We're all humans, or at least most of us. And so I think that being able to do it, the other part of the question, I think, just quickly gets to, you know, I grew up in Europe. I came to US for college. And so I feel like I have a European perspective, which is, yes, you need to regulate and you need to control these things. And then I also like the American perspective, which is you can't regulate something before you know what it is. And that's the Europeans tend to overregulate too early and the Americans wait too late. And so there's also, and I think right now it's kind of a useful thing because the Europeans put a little bit of brakes on things because they do it over there and then the big global corporations have to respond. But then the Americans allow them to kind of give them the playground to push boundaries. So I think there is a natural balance perhaps already, but more of that, and I think more of a willingness of the US to create some boundary conditions, I think is going to be important.
Yeah. So we just have about a minute left, but what is it that you feel like is most important? Because you get to see a world that a lot of us don't get to see. You get to see, particularly within the robotic world, like you understand that. What is useful for us to understand as we look about going ahead and trying to create a responsible society that has the benefits of what's possible, but also does not let it take us over in ways that might be unhealthy? I know there was this recent thing about character.ai getting sued, and there was this danger of the AI, and that will need to be explored. I'm sure there'll be many more situations that happen where people look at AI and like, wow, that was like really, really sad. And there's tons of people every day that benefit, right? And there'll be factories that will have robots. Do you have a sense of what you want to leave us with, that you feel like, all right, well, if I have to leave you with anything, here's something to think about as we try to navigate this path as a society? Easy question.
Yeah, 30 seconds. Look, I think it's about reducing anxiety. I think it's about like getting us all to a place. And we heard, young Pablo this morning, he's so amazing. Isn't his energy just like infectious? The way he kind of just, you want to listen to that guy. And he meditates. He meditates twice a day for 2 hours, what we learned today, and then goes on some long retreats. And I think if we could just focus more on what ultimately on our humanity, on being ourselves, being connected to people around us, focusing on being fundamentally human, I think we will bring that energy into the world in a way that will ultimately be necessary to have these conversations. I mean, we've heard about a lot of these themes today.
Yeah.
Let's cross over. Let's have, was it Republicans and Democrats and whatever that we were talking about, but we need to talk, but we need to talk from a place of listening, or we need to engage from a place of listening. And I think if we could just get that flywheel spinning a little bit more, if everyone in this room could go home and meditate for an hour, the world would be a little bit better. Your relationships would be a little bit better. Your work situation would be a little bit better. So I do think it ultimately comes down to personal choices we make and not fretting so much, because, there's circle of influence, circle of control, right? We have very large, very small circle of control and a slightly larger circle of influence, and then there's everything else. So let's stay, let's not fret about all the stuff that's outside of our circle of control or influence. So I don't know if,
tend to the phrase, tend to the part of the garden you can reach is one phrase.
There we go.
But I think that's beautiful. And that's kind of actually what this whole event is about. You summarized it pretty well, which is what is the work that we can do it ourselves while keeping a clear vision of the challenges in the society and engaging in the ways that we feel compelled to engage. But that there's certain things that we have more impact on. But that's beautiful. Hans Peter, everybody, thank you so much.
Thank you.